When I saw my sister wearing the gold bracelet my husband gave me for our anniversary, I felt something twist deep inside my chest. Something between recognition and nausea. It wasn't just the bracelet. It was the way she looked away when I noticed it. The way her laughter cracked halfway through a sentence. The way my husband's phone vibrated seconds later and he suddenly excused himself saying it was just work. That night, as I stood at the kitchen sink, hands half submerged in lukewarm dishwater, I stared at the empty chair where he usually sat. The house felt heavier than usual, like silence had gained weight. If someone had told me a year ago that my husband would walk out on me and disappear with my own sister, I would have laughed. Not out of arrogance, but trust. The kind of trust that takes years to build and seconds to destroy. Normal life. Setup. My name is Sarah, and I used to think my life was steady. Not perfect, just stable. I'm 36. I teach literature at a local school in Lahore, where my husband, Imran, worked as a financial advisor. We'd been married for 11 years. We had no children, not for lack of trying, but fate had its own quiet way of deciding things. Imran was never the overly romantic type, but he had a calm way about him. He'd make tea for me every morning before I woke up. And on weekends, we'd go for drives along the canal, listening to old Mehdi Hassan songs while the city yawned awake. My younger sister, Aisha, was my opposite. Fiery, spontaneous, full of opinions. She was 6 years younger and had always treated Imran like a big brother. She used to come over for dinner on weekends, bringing gossip and noise and her favorite biryani. Our parents had passed years ago, so the bond between Aisha and I was deep, or so I thought. I was her guardian, her confidant, her moral compass when she got lost in the chaos of love and life. I'd stayed up nights helping her through heartbreaks, bad decisions, job interviews. And when she laughed again, I always felt proud. Like maybe, in a world so unpredictable, I had at least one person who would never betray me. It began subtly. Imran became quieter. Not distant exactly, but different. His phone was suddenly locked for work security. His late nights at the office stretched from 2 hours to 4 hours. The smell of his cologne changed, a scent I didn't buy. Still, I told myself marriage goes through seasons. I reminded myself of our drives, our early years, the letters he used to write when we were dating. One night, while I was folding laundry, he said, "Sarah, can we talk?" I smiled, thinking he wanted to plan a short trip like we used to. But the look on his face was that of a man who had rehearsed a painful truth too many times. He said, "I think we need some time apart." At first, I thought he was joking. Then I realized he wasn't. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was panic. My mind began racing. What did I do wrong? Is it work stress? Have I not been enough? "Imran," I said, my voice trembling. "Time apart from what? From me? From your marriage?" He sighed, rubbed his eyes, and said quietly, "I don't know what I want anymore." It was the most cowardly sentence I'd ever heard. For days, I tried to reason with him. I suggested counseling, time off, anything. He didn't shout, didn't argue. He just withdrew, the way people do when they've already made a decision but haven't found the courage to say it out loud. A week later, he packed a suitcase. I remember standing by the door as he zipped it shut. He avoided my eyes. I wanted to ask why, but I already knew it wouldn't matter. He left that morning. The tea grew cold on the table. The house stopped breathing. I cried quietly, not because I couldn't live without him, but because everything I had built my sense of safety around had suddenly become a question mark. Aisha visited the next day. She hugged me tightly, and I remember thinking, at least I still have her. She stayed the night, cooked dinner, comforted me, told me I'd be fine. And for a while, I believed her. Then the calls began. Aisha stopped answering when I rang. Imran's number went temporarily unavailable. His office said he'd resigned. My texts went unread. Days turned into weeks. Then, one evening, while scrolling through Facebook, my hand froze mid-scroll. There it was. A blurred photo posted by one of Aisha's friends from a seaside café in Karachi. Aisha was in the picture. So was Imran, their hands intertwined across the table. The caption read, "Congratulations to the newlyweds." I don't remember dropping the phone, but I do remember the sound it made, a sharp crack against the tile that echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. My breath came in pieces. For a few seconds, I genuinely thought my mind had made it up, that maybe grief had distorted what I saw. But the comments beneath confirmed it. Wedding emojis, heart reactions, congratulations. My sister, my husband, the man who once told me, "You're my peace," and the girl who once said, "You're my second mother." Gone, together. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the floor, staring at the empty chair where he usually sat. Some betrayals are so deep, they don't bleed. They hollow you out quietly until you realize there's nothing left to break. I stayed silent for days. My neighbors began to whisper. Someone even called to ask if the rumors were true. I said nothing. But inside me, something shifted. I wasn't going to let them define my ending. If they thought vanishing would erase me, they didn't know the woman they left behind. They had taken my trust, my marriage, my peace, but they would never take my dignity.
For the first time in years, I stopped waking up to make anyone tea. The house remained silent in the mornings, no clatter of keys, no hurried footsteps, just the slow hum of the ceiling fan and the distant azan reminding me that time was still moving, even if I wasn't. The first few weeks after discovering their marriage were blurry. I went through my days like someone performing a forgotten role. At school, I smiled at my students, corrected their essays, and even laughed at their jokes. But inside, I was a ghost, rehearsing old memories. At home, the nights stretched endlessly. Every corner of the house carried their shadows. The sofa where Imran and I watched TV now felt foreign. The mirror in my bedroom showed a woman I didn't quite recognize. Tired eyes, trembling lips, a sadness that clung like dust. I deleted social media, I avoided calls, and for the first time in my life, I ignored Aisha's number, though she never called anyway. It wasn't anger that consumed me, it was humiliation. In our society, a woman left behind by both husband and sister becomes a spectacle. I could feel it in the way my neighbors looked at me. Sympathy wrapped in gossip. Everyone had a theory. Maybe she couldn't give him a child. Maybe the sister seduced him. Maybe she wasn't a good wife. Each whisper was a needle, and I had no way to pull them out. The first clue, or suspicion. About a month after they disappeared, a letter arrived. It was postmarked from Karachi, no return address. I hesitated to open it, but curiosity clawed through the grief. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Imran's handwriting. Sarah, I know nothing I say will make sense right now,
But please believe me when I say I didn't mean for things to happen this way. I needed time to find peace, something I lost along the way. Aisha understands me in ways I can't explain. I hope someday you will too. I'll always wish you well. Imran. Peace. That word again. He'd always said I was his peace, until peace apparently had a different name and face. I sat with that letter for hours, reading it again and again, trying to find remorse between the lines. There was none any, only cowardice dressed as philosophy. I burned it in the sink, watched the words turn to smoke. But what broke me wasn't his apology. It was Aisha's silence. She didn't call, didn't write, didn't even send a message. And that silence, from someone who once couldn't go a day without telling me about her life, was the cruelest confirmation that this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Weeks passed, and my sadness slowly fermented into something sharper. Not revenge, not yet, but clarity. I began to remember things differently. The sudden work trips, the nights Aisha stayed over when Imran was busy, the secret smiles I never questioned. It wasn't that I hadn't noticed, it was that I had trusted too much. And trust, I realized, is the sweetest way to be destroyed. One evening, while cleaning out the bedroom, I found one of Aisha's scarves tucked in the back of Imran's wardrobe. It smelled faintly of jasmine perfume, her signature scent. That's when my body stopped shaking. The tears that felt endless finally dried. I looked at myself in the mirror, eyes swollen but steady, and whispered, "Enough." I'd spent years defying myself through their presence. It was time to rebuild through their absence. The reaction, or action. I started by changing the locks. Then I painted the walls. White, clean, new. It felt symbolic, like peeling off old skin. I donated half of Imran's clothes. The rest I packed in boxes and sent to his parents with a short note. He won't be needing these where he's gone. For the first time in months, I breathed freely. But life, as it often does, wasn't done testing me. A few weeks later, my cousin messaged me. "Sarah, have you seen Aisha's latest post?" Against my better judgment, I checked. There they were, Aisha and Imran, smiling at what looked like a dinner party. She was wearing a pale green outfit, holding his hand, radiant with joy. The caption read, "New beginnings deserve old blessings." Comments flooded beneath it. "Perfect couple! So happy for you both. True love always finds its way." My chest tightened. True love? Was betrayal now rebranded as destiny? That night, something inside me refused to sleep. I opened my old laptop and started writing. Not to them, but for myself. I wrote about the nights of silence, about the lies, about how love sometimes disguises itself as loyalty until it suffocates you. And then I decided something. If they could rewrite our story publicly as love, then I would rewrite it truthfully, with every wound intact. 2 days later, I sent an anonymous email to a popular local women's blog. The subject line read, "He left me for my sister, and I found my freedom." I didn't use names. I didn't expose faces. But I told the story exactly as it happened. Within 48 hours, the post went viral. Thousands of women shared it. The comment section was flooded. "I've been there. You're not alone. She didn't take your husband. She took your burden." Each word was a balm I didn't know I needed. And somewhere between their empathy and my pain, I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my narrative. A week later, I received another message. this time from a number I didn't recognize. You didn't have to humiliate us publicly, Sarah. Aisha. I stared at her text for a long time before replying. You did that yourselves. I thought that would be the end of it. But as it turned out, humiliation has a way of echoing louder than guilt. Their friends began asking questions. Their colleagues whispered. Even their own relatives who had congratulated them months ago began to distance themselves. Aisha posted less, Imad deleted his profile, and though I took no joy in their discomfort, I felt something close to justice. Not revenge, but balance. They had written a story without asking for my consent. So I wrote the ending myself.
Months went by, and the noise around their scandal began to fade. People found new gossip, new stories to feed on. But silence, I learned, can be more powerful than shame. I rebuilt myself quietly. I went back to teaching full-time. My students became my little anchors, unknowingly pulling me toward life again. Their laughter in the classroom, their innocent arguments about poetry and grammar, it reminded me that not every relationship ends in betrayal. Outside of work, I started volunteering at a literacy program for underprivileged women. At first, it was just a way to fill my evenings. But soon, I realized something. These women, divorced, widowed, forgotten, carried the same bruises I did, only deeper, more visible. One woman, Nasima, once said to me, Baji, when someone breaks you, they think they've ended your story. But sometimes, that's when your real story begins. Her words stayed with me. The public consequence. About 6 months after the blog post, I was preparing a presentation for my class when my phone rang. It was Imran's mother. We hadn't spoken since the day he left. Her voice trembled. Sarah, can you come for a moment? It's about Imran and Aisha. My first instinct was to refuse. But something in her tone, not anger, not sympathy, but sorrow, made me agree. When I reached their house, I found her sitting in the lounge, her face lined with fatigue. She handed me a cup of tea, old habits die hard, and said quietly, They're back from Karachi. Things aren't good. Apparently, the perfect couple had begun to unravel. Aisha had lost her job after the scandal reached her workplace. Imran too had been struggling financially. Their marriage, built on betrayal, was already cracking under the weight of guilt and gossip. She keeps crying, Sarah, his mother said. She says you've turned everyone against her. I set the cup down gently. I didn't turn anyone against her. The truth did. The older woman looked away, embarrassed. You were always the calm one, she whispered. A few days later, Aisha called. For a long moment, I stared at her name flashing on my screen. Part of me wanted to reject it, to let her live in the silence she gifted me. But curiosity, or maybe closure, won. When I answered, her voice was small, almost childlike. Appa, don't call me that, I said softly. I know you hate me. I deserve it. I didn't plan it this way. I swear it happened before I knew what I was doing. I listened, not out of sympathy, but out of observation. Her excuses flowed like rehearsed lines, tears mixed with self-pity. Imran said you were cold, that you didn't understand him anymore. I thought I could fix him, fix us all. The absurdity of her words almost made me laugh. And did you fix him? I asked. There was silence. He's not the man I thought he was. He blames me for everything. We fight all the time. Sometimes I wish... She stopped herself. I took a deep breath. Aisha, you wanted my life. Now you have it. The loneliness, the arguments, the silence. You stole my pain thinking it was love. She started crying. And for the first time I didn't feel pity. I felt peace. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was free. A few weeks later, word spread that Iran had left her. No dramatic goodbye this time, just a note, a suitcase, and a trail of debts. I heard he'd moved abroad with someone new. Aisha, according to my cousin, went back to our hometown, staying with a distant aunt. Sometimes life doesn't punish you with lightning. It just leaves you to live with what you've done. One evening, while walking home from school, I stopped by a small cafe I'd never noticed before. The owner, an older woman named Shazia, struck up a conversation with me. She said she was hiring part-time help for managing events and workshops, mostly storytelling nights. Without thinking too much, I said yes. And that's how a new chapter began. Every weekend, I would host small storytelling sessions where women shared their truths. Stories of love, betrayal, survival. Sometimes they cried, sometimes they laughed. But every story, no matter how tragic, ended with resilience. It became my quiet ministry, a space where pain transformed into power. One night, after the crowd had left, Shazia smiled and said, "You know, Sarah, you should tell your story one day." I smiled back. Maybe I already am.